So, what's your name?
Cobra.
Cobra. You bite?
Frequently.
What's up, hackers? Welcome to TTI Live. My name is Taggart, and tonight on sort of a makeup stream, I suppose. Supposed to stream last night, but didn't really have the time. So today I wanted to redo a classic, which is our intro to Vim. I believe, personally, because of its ubiquity, that learning Vim is one of the most foundational and important skills if you're going to be doing anything in the realm of either information security or cybersecurity, I should say, or if you're going to be doing anything in the realm of programming, system administration, anything that really touches a Linux machine, certainly, then you're going to want to have this as a tool in your bag. Now, before we go any further, I'm going to be talking about Vim because I like it. However, it is okay if you end up not liking it. Knowing how to use it and liking it are two different things. I'm not here to try to convert you to the church of Vim, right? It's a text editor, not a religion. All I'm here to say is that if you know how to use it, you can do some pretty nifty things with that tool when it's available to you. And I have made really, I think, good use of it inside of a lot of different workflows, from programming to cybersecurity. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to get started with Vim today, and how you can learn the basics of it and beyond the basics, and how you then can customize Vim to do all the cool bells and whistles that you've seen other folks do with this tool. So to get started, let me tell you a little bit about the setup here, because it is pretty bare bones, honestly. I wanted to make this as vanilla as possible so that you understand how you can get Vim up and running pretty easily, but starting from a baseline. So I'm on a KDE Neon virtual machine, 2204. There's nothing really special about it. You can see I'm using the console terminal. I'm not doing anything dorky with the terminal, and I'm using the Firefox web browser. It's pretty much just out of the box exactly as is. The only few things that I have installed here for some creature comforts. So first of all, I've installed a screen or a keystroke monitor. So as I type, in the bottom right-hand side of the screen, you're going to see the keystrokes come in. And that's going to be really helpful for us as we learn how to use Vim. So just watch down there in that bottom right zone for keystrokes as we work with Vim. So it'll be easier to see than the small section down here in the bottom left. That's kind of part one. Part two is, out of the box, there are different versions of Vim, or VI improved. So Vim may not be installed on your system, but VI is. The same key gesture, the same key codes and shortcuts are generally going to map between them, but Vim has a lot more power, okay? And so if you have the ability to install Vim, that's definitely something that you want to do. Now, the one caveat I will say for this version of this distribution of Linux, KDE Neon, right, is that out of the box, the version of Vim that it ships with is fine, but it's missing one key feature that I really care a lot about. And so you can check that with Vim -- version. And what I'm looking for, this is a whole mess of stuff. What I'm looking for specifically is some of the stuff that it was compiled with. And really specifically, I'm looking for this right here. I'm looking for the clipboard feature. If it's not compiled with the clipboard feature, then you won't be able to get Vim to play ball with your system clipboard. And I really love that creature comfort. It's important to me that that's possible. So the way to solve that problem then is just make sure that you have installed not Vim, but Vim GTK3, which you can see right here. And that's what I've installed. You can do that from pretty much any Ubuntu derivative, right? So Vim GTK3, even if you're on KDE Neon, I know GTK, that's the GNOME toolkit, but install this on your system if you do not have that clipboard option for Vim. All right. With that, let's quickly talk about why you would learn Vim. Why bother? So the first, I think, most important reason I would say to learn Vim is because it is the text editor that you can most easily rely on being present on a Linux system, or VI. But we're going to talk, when I say Vim, I will be using that to refer to either old school VI or Vim when it's present. It is the text editor other than Nano that is most likely to be present on a system. And it is the tool, the text editing tool on a system that will be the best combination of available and powerful because of all of the things that it can do. So having that as something that you are familiar with when you go to a system that maybe you're not otherwise familiar with, now all of a sudden you have kind of like a phrasebook. Now you have a handhold, right? There's a tool in there that you know can do a lot of cool things. So whether you're on the offensive side, you're doing pen testing and you get onto a box, you know, maybe you have Vim, there are things you could do with it there. If you're on the blue team, I was doing a lot of threat hunting and incident response this week, and I'm here to tell you, I couldn't have done it nearly as efficiently without Vim. Okay? It is absolutely an indispensable tool in my workflow for how I process files. Now, with all of that power, not only comes responsibility, but it comes a little bit of complexity, because Vim and VI are from a different era. They come from a time before, well, arrow keys, and they come from a time when considering how to make a text editor was a little bit of a different thing. So let's open up Vim and we'll get the basic stuff out of the way first. Okay, so just from the command line from any terminal here, you go on ahead and type Vim, press enter, and you'll see something that looks like this. Your version may be a little bit different than mine. That's totally fine. Now, the joke, of course, always is, like, how do you exit Vim? The reason that gets confusing for people is because Vim is what's known as a modal editor, M-O-D-A-L. Vim has different modes. And contrary to what you might expect from Notepad, or we're on KDE, so Kate, or gedit, or VS Code, it is not the case that when Vim opens, you're ready to just start typing text. That's not the mode that it opens in. I know that seems counterintuitive. The mode that it opens in is command mode. It's almost like it has its own command line interface. In fact, it does. And that's what you're in right now. So it's ready to accept the command to exit. You just have to know what it is. And helpfully, Vim tells you right here that it's :Q. But if you're not familiar with doing that, then that would be a little bit alien to you. So what colon does is gives us access to the command console, and then Q is the command to just straight up quit. So you can see colon, and then I get that colon down in the bottom left, and then Q, and I'm back. So that is the basic. If you've done nothing, you've entered Vim and you want to get out right away, :Q to quit. But it gets a little bit more interesting when we're actually working with stuff. So now let's open Vim as though we were going to edit a new file. You don't have to give it a file name when you open it, but you can. And if you do, Vim will make that file for you so you don't have to name it later. So let's try that. Let's do vim hello.txt. Okay, you can see that I have some more stuff at the bottom of my Vim interface now. It tells me that I'm in a file, or what Vim refers to as a buffer. Hold on to that term for later. That it's a new file. We're at row 0, column 0 to 1. And that our selection, or our section of it, is all. Okay, so I'm ready to start typing some stuff. I know it seems crazy, like all this fanfare, all this preamble to get typing. But if you don't learn the basics, Vim will get very frustrating very quickly. But just these few little things to know will make your life so much easier. So, as I said before, Vim is a modal text editor. It's a modal text editor. We're in the command mode right now. We want to get into the insert mode in order to edit text. And the way to get into the insert mode is by pressing the I key. Once you press the I key from the command mode, now you're in insert mode. You can see that you're in insert mode right here. And now you can type text just like you would expect in a text editor. Nothing to it. I can make line breaks. I can even use my arrow keys to navigate back and forth. You're allowed to do that. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Okay, now I am ready to save and quit my file. If I can see that I'm in insert mode, is there a way to see if I'm in command mode? So the way to see that you're in command mode is that you don't see anything. It's sort of a no news is good news situation, or no news is command news situation, because when I press escape here, I have now exited insert mode and I've sort of defaulted back to command mode, because command mode is Vim's default. Again, that seems counterintuitive. Why isn't a text editor in editing mode by default? But it's kind of a safety mechanism, and also there are changes you can make to files in command mode, but they're more about revision and text modification rather than creating text. Okay, so if you don't see anything at the bottom of the screen, like insert or replace or visual, we'll get to all of those, then you're in command mode. And probably the easiest way to know for sure is if you press the colon key and you get the command interface. So, as I said, we're ready to save this file and we're ready to quit out of Vim. So, the first thing, let's learn how to save first. If I try to quit, as we did before, without saving, Vim will yell at us. It says no write since last change. And it says add an exclamation point to override. If you really want to save and if you want to quit without saving, you can say :Q exclamation point, and that will save and quit without saving anything. We don't want to do that though. Not right now. First, we're going to save the file without quitting, and that's :W for write. And what it tells us, right, is that 3 lines, 27 bytes have been written to hello.txt. Now, if we :Q, it lets us go without yelling at us. And of course, if we cat hello.txt, we can see that the text is there in the file. All right, let's bring it back up. Let's bring Vim back up. Okay. Now let's add a third line. Now, sorry, muscle memory. I went a little bit ahead. So I goes back into insert mode, but O will put you in insert mode on the next line. You are not expected to know all of these out of the gate, and we'll talk about how to get help very, very soon. But we're back in insert mode, so I'm going to add a third line. Okay, and now I get out of insert mode. I want to save and quit again. I'm going to show you a shortcut that weirdly nobody uses, and I don't know why. You can save and quit with a single command in command mode, and that's :X. What :X will do is it will save the file if there were changes, and then quit. And the reason that's kind of important is that if you do a :WQ, if there were no changes, what you've done is you've overwritten the file and changed the timestamp, right, of the last modified. You might want to be careful with that depending on the file that you're looking at. So I like :X because it only writes to the file if there was a change made. All right, so :X obviously exits, and if we cat that out again, we have our third line. Okay, let's bring hello.txt back up. All right, we've seen command mode, we've seen insert mode. There's one other mode that I want you to know about, which is visual mode. And we're going to play with this a little bit more as we go forward. But just know that if you get into this mode, don't freak out. So if you press the V key, you're going to end up in visual mode. And you can see visual down at the bottom left-hand side. This is Vim's highlighting mode. So if I use my arrow keys, and I'm specifically using the arrow keys now to be familiar to everybody, but this is not usually how we Vim, right? I can highlight different sections of my text. What we do with that next, we'll get to in just a moment. But if I press escape, I'm out of visual mode. So escape is your best friend in Vim. In fact, it's so important as a key that a lot of people I know will remap their caps lock key to the escape key so that it's closer to hand, literally closer to hand, right? So that the escape key to change out of modes is right there by your pinky rather than having to move your hand off the home row. While we're talking about keys, let's get this out of the way as well. To navigate a lot of text, there are a lot of cool tricks to do it. And, in fact, there's a game that you can play that will show you how to do it. Vim Adventures is a really neat little online game that teaches you how to navigate in Vim. So you can see here, I'll press any key to start. I'll press the enter key and reconnect since I was waiting too long. Vim is from, as I said, another time, a time from before keyboards having arrow keys. And at that time, the arrows were on the H, J, K, and L keys as alternative inputs. What that means is that H is left, J is down, K is up, and L is right. That takes some getting used to, especially if you grew up doing WASD, playing games. But once you get used to it, you'll find that you want to do it, you want to use those bindings in a lot of different places. And there are a lot of things that surprisingly support Vim key bindings. All right, so you can see I've got this little guy here, and if I use H, oh, I had to move it over to the person. Okay. So now if I move over and down, you can see that my little shadow cursor is moving all around. K goes up. L goes over. K goes up. So this is obviously a little tedious, but just to show you how it works here, right? And you can go ahead and play this and practice. For me, it's a little contrived. I like to actually practice in text. So here you can see J goes down, right? K goes up. L, if I go to a line that can go right, L goes right, and H goes left. Those are the basics of text navigation. As I said, you can use arrow keys most of the time. Now, that is true in Vim. It is not true in VI. Okay, so if you're only using VI, don't expect your arrow keys to play ball. You want to be using the H, J, K, and L keys for navigation. Those aren't the only ways to navigate, though. There are some pretty amazing shortcuts. So, for example, if I use the E key, it'll take me to the end of the current word. If I press it again, it takes me to the end of the next word. Again, it takes me to the end of the next word. See how that goes? As I press E, it's advancing by words, which are basically either punctuation or space separation. Similarly, if I want to go to the previous end of a word, I can do Shift E. My bad. B will go to the beginning of a word. That's what I wanted to do. Going back the other direction. Right? So B and E, not breaking and entering, but beginning and end of word, will allow me to go back and forth between word sections. What if I wanted to jump from the beginning of a line to an end of a line? Well, if you have a full keyboard, you can of course use the end and home keys, but there are two other keys, and in fact symbols, that are designated as the beginning and ends of lines in Vim, and they're concepts you want to get familiar with because they come up in regular expressions all the time. So the beginning of a line, let me move my cursor to the middle of a line here. The beginning of a line is the caret or the Shift 6. And you can see that it jumped my cursor right to the beginning of the line. The end of a line is designated by the $sign. And you can see it jumped my cursor to the very end as well. Hello, Raiders from Al's stream. Yes, it turns out that I was in fact streaming when Al was. A rare occasion these days indeed. Thank you, Al. Good to see you. I hope your stream went well. Hey, Matt. Always a pleasure. For those of you just joining us, we are talking about how to get started with Vim. You need not fear this text editor any longer. I am going to hold your hand through it and show you how to use this text editor, not just for basic stuff, but also how to make it pretty powerful. So we just got started. We were talking about navigation. We were talking about how the J key moves down, the K key moves up, the H key moves left, and the L key moves right, but that's not all. Right, just a quick recap for the some of you who just joined us, that the B key will move us to the beginning of the word, moving leftwards, and the E key will move us to the end of words, moving to the right. That is one trick that we have to move between sections. We also have a paragraph movement capability. So if we use the curly braces, the right curly will take us to the next paragraph in turn, and the left curly will do that as well. Now, we'll put in something a little bit different here. Do a little just JavaScript. And again, I'm not doing any auto-completion or anything. We'll just use console.log. Okay, now what's kind of cool is I can use the... Whoops, I don't want to be in insert mode. Ooh. Well, let's do the replace there. Good. Okay, so now if I use the brackets, sorry, the square brackets, that will jump me to the next code block. If I have code blocks. How cool is that? So let's make another one. If I can spell. I don't know why I chose JavaScript for this, but it was the closest ANSI language that I had. Okay, so I'm up here. I'm going to use the right arrow, the right square brackets, and it jumps me, right, to different code blocks. And the curly brace jumps me by paragraphs. Okay. Now, we've covered a lot of different commands so far, and you might be wondering, like, where can I find help here? Help is actually pretty close to hand as well. You just have to have one command that you know, and this is probably the most important command to know, which is :H. So you're in command mode. Notice that we don't have insert or visual or replace showing down here, so we're in command mode. If you are in insert mode, press the escape key to get out of it. From here, you want to do :H, and then try, say, the J key. And what happens is your screen is going to change, but don't freak out. Your screen will split into two buffers and two windows, right? So now what you're looking at is the help screen, and that's where your cursor is as well. And it'll tell you what this does. And you can see you're in this big help file with all these different sections in it. Pretty cool, right? In fact, let me full screen this so it's easier to read. So we can learn about all these different commands. If I use the braces, right? Jump to the first define. And notice that there are a bunch of modifiers. Again, this all takes practice. You don't have to know all of this to be functional in Vim, right? This is like a lot of this stuff is really ninja stuff that people will do later, and everybody has kind of their own set of Vim stuff that they do a lot. I don't use these particular commands ever, and I do fine. But some people will use them quite frequently. Once you're ready to close the help, you can just do :Q, which will close the buffer. And we'll talk more about the concept of buffers soon, but notice that we still have our original file open. In addition to the keystrokes in editing mode, we can also look for other commands. So if I do :X, for example, as a help, it'll tell us what that does, right? And you can see exactly what we were saying, is that :X is like :WQ, which is write and quit in one move, but write only when changes have been made. So we'll go ahead and quit out of that buffer, and now we're back to our original one. All right, how about deleting stuff? A couple different ways to do deleting stuff. Let's start with D. And let's actually look up the D command. Right? Delete text that motion moves over into register X. So motion is a little bit interesting because motion would be like moving to the end of the line or something like that. But I think the most common way that I see D used is actually the double D, where we delete an entire line. So if I want to knock off this third line, I would press D, D, and it's gone. But it's not forgotten. Gone, but not forgotten. So let's talk about different ways to get things back. First of all, does Vim have an undo? It sure does. U is undo. All right, and it has an undo history. So I can press U multiple times to go back in time. If I do Control R is redo. So I have those commands at my disposal as well. But it turns out that when we deleted that line with D, it went someplace else. Okay? It went into what's called a register. And just like registers in CPUs, there are slots for information. And we can look at them with the registers command. You don't have to type all that out, but you can see that I have right now several named registers. They're named a little bit strangely. Okay? I have two that have my third line because I deleted it twice, right? One of these registers has a bracket in it. Then I have a couple with the URL in it and some commands. Okay. These are, think of them as clipboard slots. And I can get them back at any time. So for example, I just closed it. I forgot what register I was looking for. Okay, so register quote or one. This is the way that they're named. So let's say 1. If I wanted to add that third line back, I could do quote 1 and then P for paste. And there it is. Now, that's a really annoying way of doing copy and paste. You should know that you don't have to do it like that. Let's delete that line again and then just press P for paste, and it's there. The last thing that you deleted or cut is also available, just with P for paste. All right, so that's one way of deleting things, but we have other ways of deleting. Another way that we can use the D key is with motion, or with line numbers. And this is very common in Vim commands, where we will prepend a command with a number of characters or a number of lines to operate over. So, for example, let's say I wanted to get rid of the entirety of function foo. I can see that it's 3 lines long, so I can do 3DD, and I knock off 3 lines. Other ways to do that. I can use the visual mode that we talked about before and highlight down and use the D command to get rid of it. Undo. One more, because it's kind of cool. Visual has another trick, which is visual line mode, which I really like. Shift V, capital V, puts us in visual line mode, and rather than highlighting individual characters, it highlights by line. See that? So I can highlight by line and then knock off those 3 lines with visual mode as well. Quick break to say some thank yous. Dalek D Vader, Meta L90, and Virtual Attack, thank you so much for those follows. Really appreciate it. Now I see I have all this extra space here, but let's say I didn't know how many lines this was. I have a couple of ways that I could easily find out, right? One way is I can turn on numbers, and this is something we'll set in our configuration later. Set NU will turn line numbers on, and I think that's something you should just have by default. But now we can see, okay, I'm going to go to 4 to 7, so that's 4 lines. Let's leave 1 as a blank, so 3DD, and now I have that set. So we talked about deleting lines. What about individual characters? All right, well, we have a bunch of A's down here. And what if I want to get rid of 2 of them? The X key will remove individual characters. Okay? But I can do that again with a number prepended to the command, and then use 2x, and that removes 2 characters at a time. Another thing I can do with the D command is I can delete to the end of a line. So I could do D to the $, and that knocks off from my cursor to the end of a line, which is something that I do kind of a lot, honestly. Like if I want to knock off the entirety of a like a CSV or something like that, right? In fact, let's talk about repetitions. So we've talked about cut. What about copy? Oh, I should mention, I didn't, I'm sorry. Every time you use X or D, what you remove is added to your Vim clipboard or that register, that first register. So if I use P right now, right, the thing that I got rid of, that whoa, is in there. If I get rid of this T and then press P, see how it was added? So I have this cut and paste thing set up. So let's say I wanted to paste this, copy and paste this line a bunch of times. Okay, bunch of ways to do this. Let's use Y for yank. So Y yanks an entire line. And then if I press P, there it is. If I press 3P, it pastes it 3 times. There is a logic to Vim. You just got to get used to it. Pause for questions. I know we're going fast. This is getting recorded, of course. I am today is like the first day I'm actually doing the right thing by the Twitch affiliate program. So the YouTube VOD will be up tomorrow. Okay. For in perpetuity. Of course, the Twitch VOD is available immediately. But yes, this is recorded, so you'll be available to review this if you want. But for now, are there any questions about what we've done so far? Or things that you want to see again? Cool. Guess not. All right, well, we talked a little bit about repetition. We talked about copying and pasting. Another thing that is kind of neat is, let's say we wanted to delete to the end of the, let's get rid of the word line and the exclamation point, right? If I delete to the end of the line, and I want to do that for every line afterward, what I can do is I can use the period key to repeat my last command. So I'm just pressing the period key here, and I'm repeating that last command. That's kind of a It's kind of a kludgy way of doing that thing, but it definitely works. And I definitely have had times where repeating a command is exactly what I want to do. All right, let's knock off all of this. Okay. I might be jumping ahead, but can you access shell commands from Vim? Say I wanted a content from another file via grep. We are absolutely going to get to that, but the answer is yes, you can. And you can even pipe your text buffer through shell commands, right? So just as a quick preview, we'll do this some more later, but just as a quick preview, you do base64 and then send it back. Absolutely possible. As a matter of fact, Vim makes a pretty half-decent hex editor by piping stuff to XXD, making your changes and piping it back. So let's say I wanted to change like one hex character here. Let's change it to like 6D. I have no idea what that's going to be. Helmo. I'll use the R key to replace and insert the L. Notice that I wasn't in insert mode when I did that. I used R to replace a specific character that my cursor was over. So you can see how the default mode is really for text revision, not so much for text creation. And I think that's the distinction that you want to think about, that insert mode is for typing a bunch of stuff, whereas your default mode is actually for revision, right? Review, and making small changes or making edits, but not producing a bunch of text. All right, for this next one, we need to open another file. Now we can quit out, but we don't have to. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to save this, right? Hello.txt. And I'm going to use the E command, which is edit, kind of like open. And I've saved this md.txt inside of my directory. Notice, by the way, that I did tab autocompletion to make that happen. That was a little fast. Let's see it again. See that tab over there? So you actually do get file name autocompletion on the Vim command line. You also get command autocompletion. I don't know why I limited it to that. You get command autocompletion, right? So if I tab, it tells me set number. No number would be the way to turn numbers off, right? But I don't have to type the whole thing, right? Set NU is set number, because there are like the Cisco shell, right? There are no other commands that have those characters that start. Okay, so we've saved this thing. Now let's edit this other file, md.txt. Oh, hey, look, the entirety of Moby Dick. One of my favorite books. And I think it's a fun one to use for this because, for one thing, this is a 1.7 megabyte text file, and Vim handles it with alacrity. So the reason I got this gigantic text file in here is to demonstrate the find capabilities. Okay, so let's search for some stuff. What shall we search for within the text of Moby Dick? I think we're going to have to go for our buddy Queequeg. So as I'm typing, notice what's happening. It's finding the first result and it's highlighting it. That's a newer default. That's not always true, but you can turn it on. if it isn't working for you. Let's go back up to the beginning of the file, which, by the way, is GG. Going to the very beginning of a file. Now that we have a multi-page file, this was important to know. So G is go, right? And so if I go to the 27th line, if I do 27 GG, it takes me to the 27th line, right? GG without any numbers at the beginning brings me to the top of the file. If I want to jump all the way to the end of the file, I do capital G, and that jumps me down to line 22,316. Those are some of my most frequently used navigation commands, honestly, just jumping to the beginning and ends of files. Okay, but for search, I start with a /, not a colon, mind you, right? / is just a command you have access to right from command mode without using the colon console. So / and then we start searching. Quick, right? Now, I press enter, and it finds it. If I want to look for the next result, I press N, and it takes me to the next result. Press N again, it takes me to the next result. Still on the same page. There we go. If I want to move back to the previous result, that's a capital N or Shift N. And that idea of using Shift to reverse your direction is pretty common inside of Vim. Now, the search is regular expression sensitive, which I think really matters. But you have to be familiar with regular expressions to take advantage of it, and you have to understand how Vim's use of regular expressions may be a little bit different than, say, Perl's. So let's look, for example, for whale. Okay. But now let's look for whale case insensitive. Eventually we'll get to a capital W. That was a terrible example. I really expected there to be a... Let's try that again. Let's try W or W, actually. Now I'm just messing around with regular expressions, I'm sorry. Let's try something a little bit easier. So all vowels, right? So you might think, okay, all vowels, that's the set A, E, I, O, U. This is gonna... Oh, just work just fine. Perfect. For certain groupings, you have to escape the enclosures. So, for example, if I wanted to do a capture group with regular expressions, I have to use / around the parentheses. Let's try another search. Let's try whale at the end of a line. There we go. So now we've got the end of a line regular expression working. And that's finding it for us pretty effectively. All right. So that's find. What about replace? Because that's usually the next thing you want to do. Once you found something, you want to replace it. Okay, so replace is a little bit tricky. because there are different ways that Vim considers the buffer. I've used that term a bunch of times now. The buffer is one of the current text things in memory that you're editing. I don't want to say files necessarily, because you can have buffers that are not yet files, right? Because I can open a new buffer that hasn't been saved anywhere yet. So those are two distinct concepts. If you want to see what buffers exist, you can look at buffers, and it'll give you a whole list, right? And notice that even though I moved to md.txt, notice that buffer 1 is still open technically, right? And if I go to buffer 1, I can go back to that file because I never actually closed it. I just opened another one on top of it. Oops. Oh, now I closed everything. My bad. There we go. So, buffers. Right. So, and I can do them by name as well. They're given these kind of bizarre names that you can use as well as the numbers. Okay. That's the difference between buffers and files. In our case, both buffers are files, but right now they're considered separately because the buffer loaded in memory is not what's saved to disk. Okay, so the reason I was talking about buffers was for find and replace. Little bit tricky. If I want to find and replace, across this entire file, what I need to do is I need to represent the this entire buffer. I need to represent that buffer in my command. To do so, I start with the %, which is the symbol that represents the buffer. It's the whole enchilada. And then I use the S for substitute. So I'm saying across this entire buffer, substitute. And let's say whale, and we're going to substitute it for line. This is the audience participation component. Hey, Arbrens. Good to see you. Yes, that's right. I'm using Vim, not your beloved Emacs, which is, by the way, totally fine. I was never able to really glom onto it, but I don't actually care. No recommendations for what we should replace whale with? Dope it is. Because I'm thinking about the dope fish from Commander Keen. That's all why. Now, a couple of other things to be aware of here. When we're doing substitutions, the find and replace flags that said honors are honored here. So a couple things to be aware of. I might want to do a case insensitive, but I definitely want to do a global. Global is a little bit tricky. You're like, wait, we're already doing global. We're doing this across the entire buffer. What does global mean here? Global means more than once per line. If I leave this off, let me create a line here just to demonstrate it. Okay. And in fact, I'm going to do a single substitute command for just this line, right? Whale, replace it with dope. Okay, see how it did just the first one? Okay, now I'm going to rerun that command with the G flag. Now all three of them changed. So that global means more than once per line. Again, take a look at that command. I did an S for substitute. Notice that I didn't have the %. What that meant was that the command was scoped to the single line that I was talking about at that point. And now, what we'll do is we will prepend this with a % and run this. And Vim will tell us that there were 1,000... Oh, so close! 1,334 substitutions on 1,287 lines. 3 more! That's all I needed. Okay? So we've now just messed with... Awesome. Towards the eye roll, thou all destroy, but unconquering dope. I'm very happy I did that. Okay, so that's global find and replace. That may not be what you want, though. What if we wanted to scope our find and replace to a subsection? Probably the easiest way to do that, after the table of contents here, is to use the visual mode. So if I use visual mode with line mode, because that'll be fast, Shift V to open visual line mode. And then let's just page down a couple of paragraphs. Okay? Now, if I colon, look what's going on. There's this weird set of characters before my command cursor already. That is representing the selection. So don't mess with that. That's supposed to be there. And then inside of that, I can replace whale with dope. But it's not like... There we go. Right? So that's inside the selection. And you can see there it was way more limited. 6 substitutions on 6 lines. Okay, let's see. Talked about find and replace. Oh, one other thing. What if we want to remove a bunch of lines? Or we want to search inverted? So let's say that I only want lines that have the word whale in it. If I only... Let's back that up. Let's delete every line with whale in it. Okay? Every line with whale in it. For that, we're going to use the G command. The G command is pretty misunderstood. So the range is global. Unless we use a line range sort of situation. But we're going to do the whole thing. And then we do a pattern, and then for each one of those things, delete it. So our command is going to look like this. Globally, anything that has the word whale in it, delete that line. We just removed 1,287 lines. And totally ruined the novel. Let's try that. Yeah. Now, let's say I wanted to remove all lines that didn't have the word whale in it. What I would do is I would replace the G here with a V for inverted. It's like grep-V. And now, I've deleted every line that doesn't have the word whale in it. 21,029 fewer lines. Let's get those line numbers back. It's unnatural to not have them. All right. We talked about buffers. We talked about registers. Couple more tricks before we go on to working with other kinds of files. We're practicing with Moby Dip. We're practicing with Moby Dick, but I do have other log files that I intend to use to show you what we can do with that. Do I jailbreak my phones? I absolutely do not jailbreak my phones anymore. I don't have a need to do it. I used to root my phones all the time, but no. I don't really care. At some point, maybe not everybody's like this, but at some point you just need your stuff to work, right? There's a season for playing with all of your tech, and then there's a season when you need it to do its job, and I'm in the latter for the most part. That's why I don't run Arch anymore. Like I have broken enough stuff to understand how it works, and now I need it to work. Detox, that's kind of off topic. Okay, so that's probably a good question for our Discord, not for this chat, okay? So, let's do some extra fun wizardry here. So, let me close out of here, and we'll do Vim hello.txt. Okay, now we'll start with tabs. It turns out that Vim has tabs natively. You don't even have to add a plugin for it. Let's do tab E for md.txt. Tab E is tab edit, which is actually the entire command. If we complete that, it's tab edit, but tab E works fine. md.txt. Look at that. Up at the top, I now have two different tabs open. They're still buffers, but they're represented visually as tabs. And I can navigate between them several different ways. Easiest way would be, well, the clearest way I should say, is tab next, right? Which will cycle through. Or tab previous, right? Again, we'll cycle in the other direction. I can also do go to tab, GT, right? Which will cycle forward. G, capital T, cycles backwards. I should have a third tab so you can see the difference. So let's add tab new, just to make a new blank tab, right? GT goes forward, and G capital T goes backwards. That's pretty nice, right? Having multiple tabs. In addition to having multiple tabs... Oh, and you can just, if you want to, you can do tab close. Okay? To close that specific tab. Now, let's say I wanted to have a split pane. Can I do that? You can indeed. I know there's a command for this. The easiest way that I do this is Control W and S, which splits my window horizontally. Now, this is a little bit tricky. I usually don't do multiple Vim panes because I would do different panes in TMux usually. That's how I would do my tiling. But you can have multiple panes inside of Vim. And that's really handy if you need to compare two different files, right? One next to each other. As a matter of fact, I would almost never do vertically like this. Instead, let me close this bottom one here. And by the way, I'm navigating with Control W as well. So Control W K brings me up to the top. Control W J brings me down to the bottom. I'm going to just close that pane. Cool. And now let's do Control W with V for a vertical split. Now, by default, the same buffer will be open in both, but I can change that, right? Control WL has moved me over to this other pane. And if I do E new.txt, let's just say, now I'm in a totally different buffer, right? I can type and do whatever I need to do. And Control WH moves me over to this one. So you can get a little wacky with it. Notice that, by the way, the panes are locked to the tab, as opposed to being both panes being split. So in a given tab, you can have multiple panes. Again, I almost never do this. I do use the tabs constantly. I have multiple files open in tabs all the time in Vim. But I don't usually do the window splitting unless I'm doing something really interesting. You can resize them, by the way. Let's do another Control WS. Actually, nice. I mean, now we've got a triple split here. So you can resize them a little bit, or a lot. You can do those either with win size or win pause. But I tend to do it with the keyboard shortcut, which would be Control W and a plus and minus for vertical. Right? That got a little bit crazy. And Control W with the left and right angle brackets for horizontal position, as you can see there. You can also prepend that, so Control W4 left, and you can see it moves over by a lot more. Or Control W20 left, right? See, it moves over by that much more. Those many columns, by the way, is what it's measuring. As you can see, it's a little wacky. I don't think I would do it like that. But you can. Okay. So we talked, so one of the questions was, how do we deal with shell commands? Let's open up a new tab and talk about shell commands. So the bang command invokes shell commands and puts the result of the shell command into the current buffer. So with a single bang, if I do ls, right? Nothing came back. So it ran the command. But yeah, it's not putting anything in the buffer. Let's put something in the buffer. Right? And pipe it through our shell, which is usually how I use this. Unless I'm doing an escape, right? Because, of course, the common privilege escalation or the kind of escape that people know is that you can do like bin bash or something like that to start a shell from Vim. You can do that, but that's not like, we're not really talking about how to break Vim here. We're talking about how to use Vim. So the way that you would usually use this is, let's say I wanted to reverse this. I can use, again, the % to refer to the buffer. And then let's say we send it to the reverse command. Easy enough, right? Could you show how to copy from TMux visual mode to a file using Vim? Ooh, that's a nice one. Yes, I will show you how to do that. We're not really talking about TMux tonight, but I will show you how to do that. We'll talk a little bit more about copy and paste as well when we get to the plugin section. So hold on to that, because we will definitely do that, okay? So one of the things that I do commonly with this shell invocation is I will process CSVs. So let's imagine sort of a CSV where it's like username, password, authenticated. Just say like a cred dump or something like that, right? So say user@domain.com, comma, password, 123, authenticated, false. Awesome. Authenticated is true. And let's do Husky hacks. But somehow we still got Husky's email. Okay, so we have this CSV. We'll write this to pws.csv just so we have this saved. And now, what do I want to do with this? First of all, I'm in this file. Do I want to exit to the shell, process it, and then come back in? No, and I don't have to. So let's say I wanted to get only the rows that are authenticated, right? And only those. So I can certainly pipe these through, and now we're just doing shell hackery, right? So I could say tail n plus 2, which gets rid of the header. Just show you that. Okay. Tail n plus 2, and then we pipe that to grep, comma, true. And then if we only wanted the username and password, we could do cut d, comma, f2, 1, comma 2. Right? So now we were able to process a file using shell commands with visual feedback right away. And now we can just write this to a new file now that we've done this. Or let's say that we wanted to process our usernames a little bit better. I do this constantly, by the way. So let's say I wanted to get rid of the domain. So let's say %s at and then dot plus and that captures everything. So I only want till the comma. So we'll capture that here. Okay. So I'm using the escaped parentheses here. I'm going to replace that with capture group 1 and the comma. What? Oh, sorry. That was dumb. I only want the comma, not capture group 1. There we go. So now we've removed the domain, right? So we can do that for, this is 2 lines, but we could do that for multiple lines, right? And now I've processed this file directly in Vim. I don't have to worry about doing a weird, annoying find and replace inside of Excel or LibreOffice or whatever. I find working with CSV data in particular much easier to do in Vim because I have those regular expression powers that are kind of hard to get to in other spreadsheet applications. I know this looks wacky if you're not used to it. Good news, I have a course on regular expressions. If you're interested, it's a micro course. You can do it in a day. And it teaches you actually how to do this in Vim as well as Visual Studio Code. So if you're interested in upping your text processing game with regular expressions, you can take that course for free. No cost at all. All right, so that was a pretty solid find and replace. Let's work a real file. We'll quit out of this. We'll quit out of everything here. Just go back to the shell here. Now, I have, for our entertainment tonight, installed auditd on this machine. And if you're not familiar with auditd, it is a very effective monitoring tool on Linux that is impossible to read. So we're going to sudo cp var log audit.log. We'll just copy it right here. Yep. Turn this off. Okay. Let's vim audit.log. There's oh, hold on a second. Sudo chmod or chown sucks. It's just the worst. Who thought this was a good idea? First of all, the timestamps are in weird, broken epic mode. They're not even in regular timestamps. And then it's like, what are we looking for, right? So one of the first things we might do is look for everything that involves sudo. How many sudo invocations are there, right? Something to be aware of. So let's first just get rid of that, or get rid of anything that isn't sudo. So we'll say globally, if sudo isn't there, right, delete that line. Now, how many lines do we have? $284. Oh, I did the opposite, didn't I? I deleted everything with sudo. Let's try that again the right way. So look for everything with sudo, or that doesn't have sudo, with v, and then delete that. Much better. Okay. So I have 67 lines. All right, so I see some of these have root and some of these don't, right? So I see some exes. I don't, by the way, see any useful commands at all, because thank you very much to auditd. But we're getting a sense of how this works, right? So we can process files pretty quickly with this. Let's say that I wanted to only look for user accounts, right? So again, anything that doesn't have user account, clear that out. User account. There we go. All right. So now we're starting to see all the stuff that I actually did. We also have user authentication, syscalls. There are user commands, which are actually what we want, right? So if we want to see all the user commands, we could say something like user cmd and remove everything that isn't a user command. Now we actually have stuff, right? Now, what if I only want the commands, right? I have sudos here because those are the things that I captured. But I have all this extra data. So I could parse through this a little bit more. We don't have to go through all of it. But we've now broken down a multi-hundred line file into just a few with a couple of really fast find and replaces. And I would argue that once you're fluent with Vim, it's faster to do it here than it is in something like Excel. Just because, or even VS Code or something, right? Or other text editors, because of the speed with which it can process text. And again, so what you could do here is say, okay, what if I wanted to only have certain fields, right? So cut this based on spaces and then capture specific fields. So I could pipe this through to cut. The delimiter is a space, and the F might be, say, the timestamp. So we're going to want 2. Then we need the 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's the command. 10. The executable. Yeah. So now we've cut that down even further. So by that interplay of Vim and the shell, you get some really interesting effects. All right. Let's check this thing out. Vanilla Vim is fine, but there are some things we can do to make this really amazing. The first thing you're going to need is a Vim plugin manager. Well, you're going to need a Vim plugin manager and a Vim RC file. So, for example, let's start with a basic Vim RC file. Vim.vimrc. There's nothing in here, right? And I have my own that I kind of use, and I keep it on GitHub so that I can copy it whenever I need it. I keep it as a GitHub gist. But there are a few things that you can do that we kind of like know right off the bat. So things that we know. We're gonna set our number lines just by default, and just by leaving that, just by putting that in here. Now, if we vim hello.txt, right, the line numbers are set for us. That's a default now. I don't have to worry about constantly resetting those. The next thing that I might do, and this is all stuff, the next thing I might do, this is all stuff that you don't need any plugin managers for. The next thing you might do is, let's go back to our vimrc. Let's set our wrapping. So what we're doing here is we're allowing line breaks and so wrap on line breaks and on a lists. That just makes some plain text reading a little bit friendlier. One last thing we're gonna, or one last thing, no. 3 more things we're gonna do. We're gonna set our clipboard. This is why we got that special version of Vim. Unnamed plus. I really hope this works. It should. Set clipboard equals unnamed plus. That value may be different depending on different Linux distributions. That's what I know works on KDE. And then we're going to set our tab stop to 4. Soft tab stop to 0. This is changing how tabs work. Expand tab. This turns tabs into spaces. Shift width equals 4, and smart tab. We're going to set those options for tabs, and then we're going to set our encoding. This isn't always a problem, but it can be, to UTF-8. Just some basics inside of our... Okay, everything still works. But a couple new things are available to us now. So if I unindent, notice that I used in edit mode, I used the left bracket twice to unindent that. If I re-indent it, right, it's real nice. And if I make a new function and I indent it, it's at the same level, and it's a sane number of 4 spaces as opposed to the 8, which it was before. So that's kind of what we just did, is make that a little bit saner. All right, so people can look up, there are different Vim RC configurations. That's mine. That's the top of mine. And then the rest of it in my Vim RC is about plugins. So there are a bunch of different plugin managers, depending on which one you want and which you like. Basically, that's the same. I just said the same thing twice. I like Vim Plug. I find it very easy to work with, so I recommend it to you. Installing it is super easy. You run this command. By the way, I should say you can run Vim in PowerShell if you want to. It's a little crazy, but you can do it. So let's go ahead and take this curl command, and we will run it in bash. Okay. And once that's done, what you want to do is, we're not going to use any of these, but we do want call plug begin in our Vim RC. And then I have my own set and then plug end at the end. So I have my own set of plugins that I like, but let's go ahead and edit our Vim RC. And oh, by the way, we set that clipboard, right? So I just copied text off of GitHub, right? So if I use right back, yep. Notice that it's pasting. It's not with a line break, which is annoying. Come on. I guess for whatever reason. Oh, because there is no new line. Okay. Okay, so now if I press P, notice I just copied and then I pressed paste from Vim. So what happened was now my clipboard is set up to work with my system clipboard. Watch this. Watch this. If I yank this line with YY, if I look at my clipboard manager down here in KDE, there it is. So by setting that clipboard option in Vim, I now have interplay between Vim's clipboard and the system clipboard. That is a really handy feature. Unfortunately, there are some limitations for those of you who are using Windows Subsystem for Linux, like me. There is not yet a way that I know of to get the Vim clipboard to play ball with the Windows clipboard if you're in WSL. I don't know what to do about that. There's just, for whatever reason, that particular channel is not available. But I have some other tricks that I use to accommodate that. That's how you copy paste outside of VMs. This isn't about virtual machines, InfoSec Kid. This is just about between Vim and not Vim. Okay? So it's how you make Vim's clipboard work with the rest of your system. Oh, right. Let's add call plug end at the end of this. Okay? Okay. Now, let's add some plugins. Where do you find plugins? Answer, vimawesome.com. Look at this cream-colored website from extreme 2012 energy. But honestly, the ones that are up top here are some of the most important. Surround, Nerd Tree, Syntastic. The Nerd Commenter is good. Do you use the mouse drag paste function? I don't really. I don't use the mouse for much. Other than clicking on stuff on websites. So let's say we wanted to add Nerd Tree. Nerd Tree is a cool one. It's a file explorer inside of Vim. All we have to do is we choose Vim Plug as our plugin manager. We add this here, and let's go over to our Vim RC, and we'll paste that in. Of course, I'm in insert mode, so I just typed P. Okay. So, plug scroll. Okay, so now we have to modify things a little bit. We can run source to get Vim running. Oh yeah, we just reload it. So we'll just quit and then open vimrc again. And now that we've rerun this and we've added these plugins here, we should have access to the plug install command, which we do, which will install plugins. There's just one, which is Nerd Tree. And notice that it split our window a little bit just to give us a status, and then we can just quit that buffer, no problems. But now, if I run Nerd Tree, I get a file browser right inside of my Vim editor. Very, very handy. Right, I can go up a directory, go back to Vim demo, and as I do so, I can open different files just by pressing enter. Right? So that's one. What else we got? I think my vimrc is public. Yes, it is. So you can see it. You can just have it. Ain't nothing secret in here. I have different color schemes, Vim Fugitive, Vim Surround, Delimitate. I have like some stuff I don't even need anymore, but this is most of what I use. Let's zoom in on this a little bit so we can see. GraphQL. Some of this is a lot of syntax completion. The big ones are, I don't need nim anymore. Rust and You Complete Me. And then we have the Dracula theme. And if you want for Previm, that's kind of a cool plugin that I never use anymore. Previm gives you a browser live preview of Markdown rendering. But again, I don't use almost any of this anymore. I just leave it in here because it's not doing any harm. But you can kind of take all of these as you like. But these are the big ones that you want. And then come on over here. Right? Paste them right in. And then that's the plug section. After your plug section, you can set up stuff like color schemes. In my case, I'm going to do color scheme Dracula. Okay, save that. If I run plug install, it'll go get everything. My bad. Plug update. Plug update. Oh, did I not... Hold on. Did I not write to the VimRC? I think I just need to close it. Yeah, there it is. So we'll run plug install. Now a bunch of stuff happens. Yeah, that's right. Have to source it. That was the thing that I'm used to doing. Now, one of these plugins that I have, YCMD, which always makes me think of YTMND because I'm an elder millennial now. We're going to have to explain to our children, you're the man now, dog. But anyway, YCMD is You Complete Me, and it's a really great syntax autocompleter, like code autocompleter, but you have to compile it once you install it. So there's an extra step for that particular one. Otherwise, you're going to get this error constantly. And now you can see that I've got my nice Dracula theme. Everything looks nice and good, nice and cool. I have... Do you use anything for quick buffer switching? Not really, PJZ, because I use tabs more than I do anything else. I don't have any reason to like worry about different buffers because I have them in different tabs. Right, so here I would be like tabby md.txt. And that's how I would manage that. I'm almost never in a position where I need to, like... Exactly. All right, let's set up that You Complete Me just because it's kind of cool to see it in action. So let's cd vim plugged You Complete Me, and I'm trying to remember how to do this. It's like install.sh, is that right? Turn this off. Ah, there it is. Should not be run. Okay. Python 3. It's a flip of a coin, and I always get it wrong, which one I'm supposed to do. Okay. Sudo apt install cmake. Let's go. So this part's like a huge pain. But it's worth the effort once you get it installed, because what you'll see. It essentially gives you the IntelliSense sort of thing going on inside of Vim for any language that it knows what to do with. And if we look at the page while it's doing that, there it is. You Complete Me. It has a list of languages that it supports, which is fairly extensive. All right, while we're waiting, hey, Vandal, Panther Patel, Shark Attack, thank you so much for those follows. Yeah, so PJZ, to be honest with you, I don't use Nerd Tree that often. I don't know what LSP is. Language, do you mean language server protocol? I think okay. Python 3 headers. I need to get, no. Yeah. What do I need? Python 3 dev? Lib Python 3 dev. You. I don't know why this thing is so slow on getting anything. Let's not worry about it right now. It's cool, but it's not that cool. We have other stuff to do. Okay, so we talked about code completion. Talked about nerd tree. Those are kind of the big ones. Rust support is good if you're interested in that. Obviously, I do a lot of Rust programming, but it's hard to beat the Rust analyzer in VS Code, which is why I do most of my Rust stuff in VS Code. To be honest, like, Vim is great. It doesn't have to be the only tool I use, right? That's okay. You can use more than one. One thing I wanted to talk about briefly is other places that Vim key bindings show up, because they show up in kind of a lot of places. So one of them is your web browser. An add-on that you can get that I love very, very much for both Firefox and Chromium is Vimium. So Vimium, let's add this to Firefox here, will add Vim key bindings to your browser. What does that even mean? It means that if I use the J key, let me turn the screen keys back on. If I use the J key, I scroll down. If I use the K key, I scroll up. Oh, I totally forgot. D is page down and U is page up. That's also true in Vim. Down and up, I have those available to me. Also, if I use Shift H, it goes back. Shift L goes forward. Other stuff. Oh, this is cool. T is open a new tab. And O is, it'll open this kind of Spotlight-esque window. That's new, right? And X is close a tab. Shift X is bring the tab back. And then my personal favorite, just because it's so wacky, if I press the F key, it adds these key combinations for all the links on the page. So, for example, if I wanted to go home here, I can do AA, and it navigates to that. So once you get comfortable with Vim key bindings, this is one place that they're available. Another one is in, I think, both Gmail and ProtonMail. The Gmail and ProtonMail key bindings are Vim-based, so you can use at least the HJKL pattern to navigate through your mail. Of course, there are Vim mods for VS Code if you want to add Vim key bindings there. Also, my note taker of choice, which is Joplin, has Vim mode. And again, once you get used to it, there are some values. Now, different tools will have different levels of support for all of the Vim stuff, right? So, for example, since we're here on KDE, the Kate text editor has a Vim mode, or a VI mode, I should say. Right? If we go to Settings, Configure Kate, Editing, and VI input mode, we can see let VI commands override Kate shortcuts. Right? We hit Apply. Right? I don't even know how to, like, set this up. There's your LSP client, by the way. Import from vimrc file. Oh, I think there's like a keyboard command that you have to use to get VI stuff. I'm trying to remember. Ah, well. The point that I was trying to make is that there are different tools that have different levels of support for VI bindings, but when they're available, they're kind of cool. Stupid, you complete me. Other autocompletes. We can look for LSP. Yeah, it's there. There we go. It does have LSP support. What am I missing now? This is my favorite part, right? Finding out what all the dependencies are that I need to get. Checking. No CMake. Oh. What do you need? Build essential. It's not a header. It's just we'll give it a shot. I don't want to install everything that I need though. Like everything inside that. It's going to be a bunch of stuff. Yeah, this is going to suck. I don't know why, but it's been very slow to get headers tonight. Look at that speed. I prefer to find the exact thing that I'm missing. Streaming affects your bandwidth. No, it doesn't. Not like that. Guess you could run a little speed test here. 400 megabits down. 410. 450. That's not the issue. Streaming affects my upload speed. All right, one more time. I do hope you're right, PJZ, that this works. Looks like that did it. At least for this phase. I've seen this fail at different components before. This looks pretty good though. All right, so while we're letting this thing build, what else can you do? So let's say you want to use Vim, but you don't always want to use it in the command line. You have some options. There is, of course, gvim. Gvim. I wonder if that's in the software store. It is. Oh, it's even installed. Oh, and you can... Wow, that was screaming fast. I'm glad I gave this thing so many cores tonight. Okay, so first of all... gvim. Look, it's Vim in a window. And it's honoring my Vim RC. But it also has buttons for when I want buttons. And this is kind of a cool way. I like gvim because it's kind of a cool way to learn Vim if you're not familiar with it. Because it allows you to see, because it'll give you the key commands, right? For how to set things up. So you can kind of learn your way around by using gvim. If you're interested, there's no, by the way, there's no shame in any of these tools, right? Use it or don't, they're tools. If they make your life easier, great. If they're too much hassle for you, don't use them. I've practiced with Vim and I found that the time I put in was paid back in time saved because of the efficiency that it gave me. If you're not finding that to be the case or you think that's too much hassle, that's a choice you can make and that's okay. Don't let anybody shame you into saying like, oh, you should be using this tool because it's cooler or it's whatever. Everyone wants to convince you that their tool is the best tool or that you should be using it, therefore they're more right than they were before. Don't fall for that trap. That's dumb tribalism, and I can't stand that part of tech. This has all been just to give you a way in to Vim if you're curious about it. It's okay to then not like it, but now you have a chance to try it. So we have gvim. There is also a project called NeoVim, which is worth talking about just because you'll sometimes hear it referenced. What is NeoVim? NeoVim is not Vim. It is Vim based, but it's its own thing and it runs everywhere. You can get NeoVim for Windows, you can get NeoVim for Linux, you can get NeoVim for, I'm pretty sure you can get it for OS2 Warp. And it has a lot of cool features in it. I found it to be more trouble than it's worth, personally. That was just me, because it is different enough from Vim that, and it's not present in as many places, right? Because you have to specifically install it, that all of the stuff that you're going to do to customize it to make it cool now makes all the things that are your muscle memory not necessarily what you're going to encounter on other machines. And if you never remote into other machines or you never deal with other people's computers, go for it, right? But if you do, if you spend time like I do, working with remote computers that you don't own and you want to be able to be conversant, like you want the memory in your fingers to be exactly what you end up doing on those remote machines, be aware that there will be differences, right? With all the stuff that NeoVim implements. It is a cool project though, and I recommend checking it out if you're curious. NeoVim is the fork of Vim that made Vim actually implement async execution, right? There are also plenty of there are Rust-based editors that are adding Vim key bindings and things like that. If you want to do some of those sorts of projects, you can certainly explore them. And once you're comfortable with Vim key bindings and Vim navigation, now that entire world of tools opens up to you, which is kind of the point. All right, let's try this. Let's try a Python package. So we'll do, yeah. def vim fb.py. Okay. Very simple. If n 15 0. Okay, so now, as I was pausing, you can see that it kind of auto-completes here for me. It gives me options. And then if I press the up arrow into this, if I press enter... Oh, never mind. Print, say... Yeah. Hello, world. No, I was trying to print VizBuzz. That's the whole point. Right. Let's I know we don't actually need it for this, but let's import random just to show you how it does completion. Import random, and then we'll say down here random dot. Thank you. Okay, so now I have all of this stuff that it's finding for me inside of Python, and then there we go. That's what I wanted to see. As I highlight one of these things, it gives me the definition up at the top here. If I press enter, I can learn more about it up in my Scratchpad. Or close it, depending on how much documentation I want. So... pretty handy. I don't use it as much as I used to, but it is nice to have. And I don't have Rust installed on this machine, but it does work with Rust as well. Okay. Let's see. Oh, right. We wanted to talk a little bit about the interplay between Vim and TMux, because that was a question somebody had, and I want to make sure I answer it. So TMux is its own thing, and I have my own configuration for TMux, okay? But even without that configuration for TMux, we can talk a little bit about the interplay here. So let's first start a TMux session. I have to install it first. That should just be there, I think. Forget screen. Give me TMux. Okay, so we have TMux. Default configuration. Okay. Let's get all of our stuff here. Okay, so this is, let's say I want to get this data into a file that I can then play with. The way that I would get this into Vim first is I would use the built-in TMux clipboard mode. Control B, then left bracket, head up here, and then start my selection with Control Space, and then end it with Control W. Okay, now that is now in, again, by default, that is in TMux's clipboard. Now, let's say stuff.txt. Okay. Now I will go into insert mode. Has to be an insert mode because TMux doesn't know about Vim. And then use Control B, right bracket, and paste that in. Okay? Now I have that data. And if I wanted to clean this up, I could. You know, similarly, if I needed to get data out for whatever reason, say I just wanted md.txt, right? I don't have to use TMux because I set up the Vim to system clipboard configuration, right? So if I yank md.txt to the end of the line, right? Let's open up a new TMux window here. If I cat and then Control Shift V, right? md.txt was on my clipboard because I got it from Vim. So then the question is like, how can I make that work just a little bit better? How can I make TMux play with my system clipboard? Because that's really the missing stage there. If I can get TMux to play with my system clipboard so I don't have to do that weird Control-B right bracket to paste in Vim and just use regular P or Control-Shift-V, how can I do that? The answer is a Vim plugin, a TMux plugin called TMux Yank. To do all of that, though, you would need... let's detach this session. You would need a TMux plugin manager, which is TPM. So we're going off of Vim for a second, but it's kind of cool as long as we're in like terminal dorkery land. This is something that I use. This is something I set up on every system that I use. Okay, so we start by cloning TPM into this directory. I don't know why I do that so many times where the command includes git clone and then I type git clone. Okay, so TMux plugins TPM is now in my home directory .tmux/plugins/tpm. Okay, so then what do we do from there? From there, you would set up a tmux.conf. Here are some TPM sensible. I have my own, which is over here. Hang on. Because I keep these available for people in case they're interested. There's nothing secret about them. And PJZ is right. Your terminal, TMux, and Vim have a bunch of functional overlap. There is no one right answer. This is what I figured out works for me. So this is my tmux.conf. You can see I've got a bunch of TPM plugins. Sensible. Resurrect is cool because it actually saves TMux sessions across restarts, and I can resurrect them to bring them back. I think that's neat. And then TMux Yank is the one that matters for what we're doing here. Okay, and then I have a whole configuration of how I like the bar to get set up and all of this, right? So I will put that in my tmux.conf. Right? And then TMux. Now what I do is Control-B, I hope. Or I might have to run the source on it. Yeah, because I detached it. Yeah. TMux source. TMux.conf. TMux. Come on. There it is. I was just impatient. Yeah, Control-B, I will add stuff. And now look at how cool it looks. But the other thing that I have... Yeah, I don't need that session. Why did I do that? There we go. So now... what I can do, this is kind of cool, is if I want to, let's remove all of this. Just remove all of my lines. Notice that I went up to the top and then D, capital G, to delete the whole file. Okay, so now I'm over here. Let's say I want to copy all of this. So now I will do the same. Control-B, left to get into clipboard mode. And then Control Space to start my selection. And here's the only difference. If I press Y, now that has gone into the system clipboard. I come back over here hit paste, and I have it there. So that's a lot smoother, right? I don't have to do the Control B right bracket stuff. It's still a pain to get out of TMux, but it's doable. And then it's, you know, right in the system clipboard for work later. And if you're using a clipboard manager, right, then that's accessible here as well, which is really, really handy. So this is, I didn't plan on doing this, but essentially I've reproduced my entire terminal setup tonight with the TMux plugin manager. You saw it doesn't take long to set up at all. And then the Vim RC as I've configured it with Vim plug, which is a lot of people like Vundle too, which is fine. I just like Vim plug because this is what I started with and I got used to it. And that's kind of it. You have a really nice, very functional text editor. Xcopy, no need. No need. With the clipboard set as we did, if we setting our clipboard like that meant that we didn't have to do that. All right. What is the app that shows your keyboard as you type? That is an app called Screen Keys. And I installed it just for this. Because I figured with Vim it was going to be necessary to have a whole bunch of keys that are easy to see. I like it a lot, right? And it just lives down here. I can turn it off whenever I need it. And you can configure where they show up if you want them at the top or the bottom or whatever. But yeah, super handy. I'm always trying to figure out where to make panes, windows, tabs, terminal, TMux, or Vim. Okay, so me too. Here's kind of where I've landed. Give unto TMux everything that isn't text editor buffers, basically. So I will... Yeah, here's the one I never use. I never use the terminal emulators split anymore. Because I've gone all in with TMux, I like to do it that way. And, oh, yeah, here's the other reason why I want to do that, right? So let's say I create a layout. Just a simple layout here, right? With Vim open. Now, with TMux Resurrect, if I do Control-B, Control-S, the TMux environment is safe. Sorry. This was just my mouse highlighter. Now the environment is saved, right? If I close this, I love this. Right? If I close this for whatever reason, yeah, no, do it, die. Let's bring console back up. Zoom in. TMux. Control-B, Control-R. Yeah, and I've got Resurrect. So it brings it back up. And look, Vim's open even. So if I had a buffer open in Vim, it would have saved it too. Very, very handy, right? It's very difficult for me to lose data this way. So this is kind of why I leave TMux to do most of my tiling work for me. Now, let's say if I am... Is it the same as detach reattach? No, it is not PJZ because it survives restarts. TMux Resurrect saves a state file or a session file. Do you use the choose tree-zs bound key in TMux to choose session have multiple TMux sessions? How does resurrect persisted state? I don't actually know all of how it does it. So I do sometimes have multiple sessions running, but I pretty much do, to navigate between them, I do Control B S. And I just look for the one that I want. Is how I do that. Probably not the best way to do it, but it's the way that I've learned how. Oh. Okay. Then yes, I guess. I don't really know as many deep TMux. Yeah, Control B W, right? For choosing specific panes. I don't know as much deep TMux dorkery as I do Vim. But I know enough to like customize it this way and get it to do what I need it to do. And that's okay. Like, you don't have to know everything, right, about a tool. And as this conversation is highlighting, there's always going to be somebody who knows something that you don't. That is okay. In fact, that's cool and exciting. The thing is that we're all excited to share knowledge. The trick is, as you do that, as you have those conversations, one, be careful not to get defensive. It's okay to not know, but on the other hand, it is not okay to make fun of somebody for not knowing, right? Right? Kindness in both directions is the way that we succeed. And it's something that we need more of in this community. So just be aware of that. This is an area where people like to lord knowledge over others or gatekeep, and don't ever, ever, ever freaking do that. We need to be better than that. Yeah, I understand rebinding your TMux master combo to a different key binding. I'll tell you what I honestly do for that in my work life. That is when I go to multiple tabs in the terminal emulator. Okay? So like, let's say I was going to have, this is my local system, and then I was going to remote into like a cloud system. That is when I would open up a second tab in my terminal emulator. So I guess my mental model is terminal emulator tabs are about hosts, and then these are about specific tasks on the host. That's what TMux does. So with that, then I can SSH into whatever I'm trying to SSH into, and then I can have that TMux going, and I can use the same key bindings in both places. And by the way, console is cool. I don't actually use console as my default terminal emulator. I like to use Terminator, but I am starting to get turned by Alacrity. Which is pretty cool looking. And it's cross-platform. That's why I'm excited by it. So I could use the same terminal across multiple OSs. But in all honesty, so of course at work I'm using Windows. The Windows terminal slaps. It's actually really good. Moving to Linux on your desktop anytime soon. Let me be clear. My daily driver laptop has been a Linux machine for over a decade. I use Windows for two reasons. One, I do not feel like playing NVIDIA driver roulette, especially when I need the stream to be rock solid. Two, because I do security work, and security work means Windows, and I want to have easy access to the Windows API. Like, it is more efficient for me to virtualize Linux than it is for me to virtualize Windows off of Linux. That's just how it goes. And so as much as I like Linux, I love it. As a matter of fact, it has given me a whole career. It's given me a whole series of experiences. Unfortunately, this machine cannot be Linux. which will be my line right up until I am forced to use Windows 11, at which point I probably will go through the trouble of figuring out how to do this the hard way on Linux. But it's killing me. I don't want to do that because this is a minor third point, very minor third point, but yes, this does run games, and as cool as Proton is, there are some things that are just not performant enough yet for me. So I would love to run all Linux on the bare metal. I would love to. If it makes you feel any better, Steam does a decent job these days. I don't want a decent job. I want a very good job. So for really high intensity stuff, which I don't do that often, but like if I'm doing a Final Fantasy, I need that to be butter smooth, right? If it makes you feel any better, this machine that you're seeing here is being accessed from a jump box. This jump box, let me unfull screen this here, is another KDE Neon machine, which itself is being virtualized in a Proxmox server, which is an HP ProLiant DL380p, which I have in another room. So I have plenty of Linux running on here, just not this particular desktop that you're seeing the stream come from. But all of the lab stuff that I do is under a Proxmox hypervisor. Which, by the way, works fantastically. All right, we're kind of off topic at this point. Let's get back here. Yeah, Starbase is the name of the hypervisor because I am a gigantic Star Trek dork. Got my fleet right here in front of me. Here's the Yorktown class Enterprise F. Okay, last call for questions. Anything that we covered tonight about Vim or any of this other terminal dorkery that anybody wanted any more depth on, or that we wanted to elucidate, or anything that we haven't demoed that you'd like to see? DS9 for life. I love DS9. I remember watching DS9 with my dad and him explaining how the Bajorans were an allegory for the Jews. And I was like, that makes a lot of sense. Why can't we have ridged noses? What about Voyager? The less said about Voyager, the better. Nah, it's not fair. It kills me because I actually love the Intrepid class. It's a great design. And there's some like really good, there's some really good writing in Voyager, but it's so uneven, right? It's just a mess. I just like the mouse on TMux. So I don't use a lot of stuff that uses the mouse in the terminal because I feel I've had it mess things up more than I've had it be useful to me, if that makes sense. But if you use the mouse in the terminal, that's totally fine, right? If it works for you, that's great. Suggested TMux tutorials. I actually have one. I have one for you. So we haven't really been doing a whole lot of InfoSec stuff tonight. This has been very core competency heavy, but TryHackMe has, I believe it's a free room too, has a TMux room. And it is really good. Oh, it has 2 of them now. So I would recommend these because they're really nice walkthroughs that teach you the key bindings. And they have this really nice shortcut. So that would be my recommendation. TryHackMe is a great platform. Obviously, I use it a lot for security work. But those 2 would be where I'd go. And then for Vim, There is one tool that I didn't mention tonight very specifically, which is Vim Tutor. Vim Tutor can bite me. I do not like it. I think that it was for a completely different era. I don't like it, just like I don't like the Emacs tutor mode. I found them both very annoying. The best way to learn and practice with Vim is to use it, to make mistakes, and force yourself to like get used to the basics of entering insert mode, using escape to get out of insert mode, doing some basic find and replace. I really think GVim is a good one too. Yeah, hey PJZ, look what I have open. I also love Vim Adventures. Way ahead of you. Yeah, that's how we started the stream. The Vim Adventures is a really great way to get comfortable with those movements. And it honestly is. It's muscle memory. You know, I play the piano, and so I think about a lot of this in terms of just getting the movements into your fingers. And that's really what it is. You just kind of, the movements will become instinctual after a while. You won't think about them as much. But then the other part is, if you really, really want to get the most out of Vim, practice your regular expressions. That really is the kicker. Once you know regular expressions and you can use them inside of Vim, it becomes this unbelievable powerhouse of a tool. Oh, wait, that's Oreo Bites? That's so cool. That other room was Remux to TMux? That's Oreo Bites? That's great. Well, then I absolutely endorse that. Fantastic. Yeah, that's really good. I know humans love to find patterns that are not real, but it seems a lot of cyber people are also musicians. I think that's probably right. I think that having the diligence to practice something is a requisite for being successful in this industry. I think for me, there's probably also something to be said about how we enter flow states. Because when I'm playing the piano, right, nothing else in the universe matters. That's like what I'm doing. It's the easiest way for me to enter a flow state. Nothing else comes close. And I think there is something there about sensory experience and how we process information. What up, my ND pals? All right, well, you know what? I think we've done what we set out to do tonight. We went over Vim. We got all the way through customization and up into TMux. So I think we can call it there for tonight. And thank you so much for hanging out. I hope this was of value to you. This is recorded and it will be released tomorrow on YouTube. So if you need to go back and review it, you will have access to it there. And of course, it's recorded on Twitch for a little bit as well. I will be back on Saturday doing some pretty cool blue team stuff. I have some really neat research that I want to share with everybody. So that'll be at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1800 UTC. And then nobody that I know right now from the hack list is streaming, so I don't want to do a blind raid. But if you're interested in other InfoSec streamers, go check them out at infosecstreams.com. But with that, I will let you on your merry way. Have a great evening or whatever time of day it is where you are. As always, friends, please be good to yourselves, be good to each other, and happy hacking. I will see you next time.